Good morning. Welcome to Unity Longmont Spiritual Center on the 11th of August, 2024. And we are blessed to have Christina Hildebrandt with us here this morning to play her harp. And my name is Dava Money, and I will be speaking about our relationship with God. And as always, take what serves you and leave the rest. And if there's another name other than God that serves you, just substitute that when I'm talking, please. So we will hear from Christina. What a beautiful beginning to our service, Christina. Thank you. Let us take a breath together and open ourselves to prayer. Beloved presence, we gather today to celebrate life, to celebrate our community and each other. We take a moment now to allow ourselves to smile with gratitude and appreciation. We open ourselves to divine intuition, knowing we can each be guided, we can each be supported in the journey of our life. We remind ourselves and each other that we are never alone. We are always held in love. And we hold each other in that love. And again, we say thank you. And so it is. We will hear from Christina. Thank you, Christina. It amazes me and touches me how you create a world for us with that music. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I've been speaking the last several weeks on our relationship with God. And we started out by looking at original sin, which some faiths believe in, and whether or not that resonated for us. And if so, how that would impact our relationship with God. Um, and then last week, we talked about unity and Buddhism. So I've been drawn to go back to some of the very, very old faiths that we know have impacted us in the long run. And we know they impacted our founder, Charles Fillmore. He studied all of the faiths that he could get a hold of, and he looked for what united everything. So, as I go through some of the specifics about Hinduism today, I invite you to notice, do any of the practices and or beliefs resonate with you? It's very, very old. It's been around for a long time. And to notice what might be similar to unity beliefs. And as always, I encourage each of us to check in periodically with, what is my current belief system? What do I really, really know or understand about myself and this world that we live in? I do believe, because our consciousness is always evolving, that our belief system, our beliefs often tend to evolve too. And I think it's important periodically to just pause and go, huh, what may have shifted? And what does that mean to me now? I'm going to take a leap of faith here and say, I'm imagining that one of the things that we all have in common is that we come closer and closer and closer to what we know to be divinity, that we increasingly spend time there, whether that's through meditation, through prayer, through nature, through conversation, through choice. So in this moment, I invite all of us to take a breath and become aware increasingly. What is divinity to each of us? We throw that word around a lot in unity. And one of the ways that we throw it around is to say, as human beings, we are both divine and human. How does that make sense to us? You know, I don't know if you can recall the very first time you heard that. The very first time I heard it, my mind went into, oh my gosh, that's a puzzle I have to figure out. I'm not sure how much of the puzzle I have completed, but isn't it a gift? Isn't it a gift to be here alive in a human body, aware of being human, of having these five senses, and maybe increasingly aware of our divinity? In this moment, what does it mean to you to be both divine and human? Is there anything else you want it to mean to you? Do you have any longing around this concept, this understanding, this belief of being divine and human? And as always, I like to ask myself, and where's my gratitude for it? How do I express being grateful for such a gift? You know, I think in my 24-hour a day, 7-day a week life, I get caught up, I get focused on the here and now, the physicality of life. And then something may occur that just brings me back to the divine, like walking in a field and seeing dragonflies. You know, all of a sudden, their beingness, their isness slows me down. And I feel this deep connection with them. And I imagine you have similar experiences. You know, many of us have pets. What happens when we look into their eyes? What are we seeing there? Are we seeing animal and maybe something divine? Think for a moment, if you will, of perhaps feeling sad at some point, disgruntled, something uncomfortable, and your pet comes up to you and nudges you. They make eye contact and say, I'm right here with you. And boy, are you divine. You feed me every day. You take care of me. You're absolutely divine. What else in our lives remind us of our divinity? I'm looking at your beautiful faces and art on your walls. Does art remind us sometimes of our own divinity? You know, somebody has taken the time to depict something in the world or not of the world. And we slow down and we look at it, and we are often impacted by beauty. Now, here's a tricky question. How often do you allow yourself to be reminded of your divinity by your own beauty? By your own beauty. The beauty of having a body, the beauty of moving through this amazing world, the beauty of having something beyond this humanness that helps us understand the vastness of life, the endurance of life. We all have such opportunity when we simply pause and take a breath to remember who we are and maybe even remember why we're here. In this moment, what is important to you about being divine and human? As I think with my mouth here, what came to my mind was, oh, I can tap into that divinity to pray for others and myself, and that there's a kind of power there. There's a kind of energy, a kind of force that perhaps will enliven my prayers. What is a prayer? It has been said that every thought is a prayer. Isn't that amazing? And maybe sometimes a little bit scary. I can't tell you that all my thoughts have been positive in my life. Do I want that? Sure. And sometimes I practice working on it. And then I remember to be gentle with myself, because when that thought isn't divine, what is it? It's human. So we have this kind of coexistence with life, that we experience ourselves, others, and the life we have, both from being human and divine. So let's look for a moment at some Hinduism principles and practices, because Hinduism believes in divinity, and it can show up in all kinds of amazing ways, right? So in Hinduism, there is a belief and understanding that we have real and deeper desires. And one of those desires is to be. I think that's what we're touching on now, is what is it like to simply be? And how do we appreciate that and not take it for granted, right? Another desire is to be aware. I invite each of us in this moment to take a breath and notice what we are aware of. I'm aware of the chair on which I sit. I'm aware of your faces. I'm aware of a ringing in my ears. All kinds of things to be aware of. The third thing that we have a deep desire for is joy. Do you remember joy? You remember that kind of expansive feeling that comes with joy? Do you remember in your own life what evokes it? It could be something small. It could be something huge. The Olympics have been going on. Has that brought you some joy? The temperature dropped here. Did that bring you some joy? We are all blessed to have food, to have our basic needs met. Does that bring us joy? Is joy something that we can articulate, that we can define? Sometimes I think it's just something we need to experience. I find that with these more ephemeral experiences, when I start applying words to it, it seems to diminish that which I was experiencing. And yet, words are what we've got to share with each other. So, in Hinduism, there is a belief of an infinite being, infinite knowledge, infinite joy. How is that similar to unity belief about divinity? How is that similar to any of your own beliefs? There's another belief in Hinduism that we want liberation. What does that mean, to be liberated? At first glance, it means to be liberated from some limitations. I know as a human being, I've got some limitations, right? I'm aging. I'm nearly deaf. I need glasses. I can't run like I used to run when I played soccer. Are those limitations? They might be. What if it's simply change and evolving? Hinduism tells us that all of this liberation we want is already available to us. It's right here, it's right now. And where do we find that? And remember unity, we find it within. We find it by going in. Last week we looked at Buddha nature, that we all have Buddha nature. We also have what is called Atman, that humanness of Brahman, the Godhead. You hear the similarities here? And it is believed, although we're little, that Atman and Brahman connection is not. It's infinite. And so again, I ask you, when and how have you experienced that infinite nature? You know, dragonflies flying around, the pets, a beloved, a breath. So our body, our personality is Atman. And then there's this divinity that we are a part of. What gets in our way, according to scholars of Hinduism, of living in that divinity is physical pain, frustrations of desire, and boredom. Have we experienced any of that? It is believed that pain, when we tolerate it, may have a purpose. One of the things we know is I might need to get something checked out, right? So the purpose might be to lead us toward greater health. If ego had no expectations, there would be no disappointment, right? I loved that someone I knew a long time ago defined disappointment as one not leading one's appointed life. Kind of made sense to me. What is our appointed life? Perhaps it is integrating in our experience and understanding that humanness and that divinity, perhaps. So some faiths, including some Hinduism, suggest that we detach from our finite self or from this reality and go beyond frustration, go beyond ignorance into transcendent knowledge and identify self as spirit, as infinite, as indescribable. What do you think about that idea of going beyond the humanness to the divinity? We often hear the two put together in unity, fully human, fully divine, as though they're enmeshed, as though they are part of the whole. So in Hinduism, there are four paths to the goal of freedom, of liberation, and they are called yoga, which means to unite, to place together, to place under discipline, under the yoke. These four paths are for four different people. Aren't we each somewhat different? And maybe something will appeal to each of us differently. So there's the reflective path. There's the emotional path. There's the active path. There's the experimental. So again, they are reflective, emotional, active, experimental. Does any one of the four appeal to you? That might be your path. In all of these paths, habits, practices are cultivated. Practices that lead to non-injury of self and others, of truthfulness, of not stealing, not taking something that's not ours, of self-control, cleanliness, contentment, self-discipline, and desire to reach the goal. You know, there are some faiths that we may have heard of that put down desire. And yet, here is a recognition of the propulsion of that energy. Think for a moment, what are you desiring at this time in your life? What are you longing for? What might be calling you? What might be inviting you through desire? I think in our culture, we have a really ambivalent and mixed feeling about desire. We make commercials about it, ads about it, draw attention to a product with it. But then there's an old Puritan piece, perhaps, of desire is not good. We need to diminish it, squelch it, be done with it. So I invite you to consider, what's your belief about desire? And when and how do you experience it? Is there some place in your body that tells you, oh, I desire that? Right now, I have a sense in the middle of my chest that I want that. Let us not forget about our body. So, Buddha, when he went through the Hinduism that he experienced, took the shortest path. Some of us might not want to take the shortest path. We might want to meander, check things out. So, look at these four paths. The first is Jnana yoga, that's knowledge. That's philosophical. It includes meditation and logical demonstrations. Are you a logical person? Does this appeal to you? So that logic comes through hearing, thinking, imagining. I've shared with you before that I had this really strong image and sensation recently of being in an immense sea, no end to it, no boundaries to it. And I'm a turtle and I'm swimming and I can thrash around and create quite a mess. Or I can calm down and swim more calmly and not disturb the other turtles, the coral, etc. How do you picture the infinite and your role in it? Because we all have a role in it, don't we? Another path is bhakti yoga, the yoga of love. In this one, there is a sense that self is separate from God and that we are looking at all that is God, with love, with adoration. Love for love's sake. Think for a moment, what do you love? What do you adore? Is there some kind of reverence in that? In that practice, there are stages of seeing God as a protector, like father, mother, master. And then as you continue to move forward, God as a friend, an intimate companion. And then God as a lover. Think about Rumi, the poet. He spoke of God as a lover all the time with such beautiful language, such beautiful images, that it captures a sense of that God as a lover. The third path is karma yoga, and that's working for God's sake without attachment to outcome and channeling God's energy. Have you ever found yourself working, perhaps driven by desire, working so hard for something that you don't tire, that you are passionate about it? Isn't it a lovely feeling when we have that? So then there is um, Raja Yoga. That's called the Royal Road to Integration. And it's especially for people with kind of a scientific bent. So the belief is true self is more wonderful than we can possibly know. And we have passion to experience that self. So we experiment. We try meditation, we try a walk, we try poetry, we try art. We're open to finding whatever stimulates that awareness of divinity. So there are mental exercises that are used in that practice with the recognition that, again, we are being itself. So the experiments might be out here in the world, but they always bring us back to the inside and to a direct experience of divinity. Thank you, dragonflies, for that. So there are different paths because there's a recognition that people are different. Where do these paths go to? They all ultimately lead to mystical consciousness. What is mystical consciousness? Have you ever had that experience of something completely shifts? Even our vision might shift. Our feeling of being in a body might shift. Our breath might shift. And there's a deep awareness of something mystical, something beyond our five senses. I think it's the divinity within us that connects to that, that recognizes it, that fosters it, that follows it. Words are merely pointers. And I think about the koan of pointing at the moon. What's important? Is it the moon or is it the finger? We recognize that we really, really can't define Brahman. We can experience Brahman, though. We can have a very personal relationship with God. What is your relationship with God like? They also believe, Hindus, in reincarnation or transmigration of the soul. Many Unity folks do too. Charles Fillmore did. Many folks that I have met have had a sense of previous lives. Maybe not even all the details of it, but just a sense, maybe a kind of remembrance. I know many decades ago, I had an image of being on the Aegean Sea on the beach, throwing a pot on a wheel and feeling like I was a very old man. Then there was another experience a couple decades later where I felt like I was this huge, very dark-skinned man. And I looked down at my feet and I had specific sandals on. And the word Nubian came to me. I had no idea what that meant. Of course, I've Googled it since. But I also then had the experience within a year of being Philadelphia and being told to go across the street. There was something for me. And there were those sandals, which I wore for about 10 years until they just fell apart. So there is the belief too in Hinduism that there is a complete personal responsibility, that we have to take responsibility for our spiritual journey. We have to take responsibility for our practices. I love the old kind of therapy description of the word responsibility, meaning ability to respond. So as we live in this physical world, how do we develop this ability to respond to the invitations that are there, the dragonflies, the sandals? We have that responsibility. Is it onerous? Is it hard? Maybe sometimes. Let's go back to joy. We have joy. Can it be joyful? And just unfolding naturally for us. Isn't that preferable? That's my preference. So when I find I'm making it hard and arduous, I might take a break. I might put down those 6 spiritual books I've been studying and go out in the backyard and look at the tomato as it ripens. What works for everyone? Different things, right? Perhaps, here's a crazy thought, some of this physical world is here to remind us of that which is beyond this world, that includes this world, that is everything. Okay, I got my dragonflies. What do you have? There is a belief that our spirit is never alone. I imagine each and every one of us have been lonely at some point in our lives. Oh, it's so painful. It's so hard. How do we, in that place of loneliness, remember who we are and how we are never alone? And if we can't figure that out on ourselves, can we reach out to a beloved and say, I'm feeling lost here. I'm feeling alone. Can we have that courage to do that? And can we hear when someone else asks us for that? So I'm going to stop here and maybe come back to more Hinduism at another time. There's a kind of paradox that I'm seeing in it. We each have an individual soul, and yet we are part of the whole. Does that sound like unity? So again, I invite you to be playful with these ideas. What strikes you as true with a capital T? I think we recognize truth. I think when we hear someone speak and they say something profound and true, there's a resonance, at least for me. So I invite you to consider, what is your truth at this time in your life? And how do you celebrate that? And how do you celebrate yourself? And so it is. And we will hear from Christina.
Thank you, Deva. That was wonderful to hear. I was familiar with the 4 yogas, but it's good to hear that description and to realize that we, or at least I experience all 4 yogas at different points in my life and with different intensities. And I was thinking as you were speaking, what I love and value in life. And what I love and value is the sense of joy, interconnectedness, and vastness, that vastness that we cannot put our finger on. And so I thought, I'm going to look up the Sanskrit words for these things. So ekam is interconnectedness. Uruta is vastness. And mudita is joy. And some of you may have heard the phrase tat tvam asi, which means you are that. And so when you cannot express the joy, the interconnectedness, and the vastness, you just say that. So I have created a little song along these lines. tat tvamasi ekam urutamudita ekam urutamudita tat tvamasi tat tvamasi ekam urutamudita ekam urutamudita om om tat tvamasi tat tvamasi ekam mudita tat tvamasi ekam mudita tat tvamasi
Thank you, Christina, for sharing your human and divine self and all the creativity that flows from both of that. Thank you. Thank you. It's at this time that we go into our donation of love and light. And as we do that, let us take a breath and be aware again of our human and divine self, of the love and light that we are essentially. Let us focus on that and allow it to expand, allow it to be shared. And as we experience that, notice the joy that comes with sharing. And we come back to our gratitude for this opportunity to share love and light together. And so it is. And we'll finish with music from Christina.
So, Skip, you once said that you really enjoyed this kind of amorphous cosmic creation that I did. It was a couple of years ago. Well, we're going to go cosmic and amorphous again, which means there will be notes that are very interesting, and we'll just see what happens. So I invite you to close your eyes and just kind of allow your heart to expand.